My name is Colonel Avery Grant. I'm 37 years old, and tomorrow morning, I'll walk into the boardroom of Stratus Dynamics, the very company my father built, and determine whether the military contract that now fuels their next fiscal quarter will move forward or die in that room. They don't know it yet. Not my father, not my brother. Tomorrow, when CEO Rebecca Owens calls me Colonel Grant in front of 24 engineers and directors, they'll understand who I've become. But not tonight. You want to know something ironic? I still parked in the same cracked driveway I used to back in high school, except now it's this sleek government-issued black Tahoe instead of my old beat-up Jeep. That contrast, like every detail in this story, says more than I could ever yell. Before I can continue my story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your city and local time in the comments. I want to know where in the world you're watching this from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. I sat in the Tahoe, engine still humming, the heater wrapping me in that impersonal government warmth. My palms were dry, my gut still a battlefield. The porch light blinked once, then held steady. Same as it had when I was 15, sneaking in late from basketball practice. That porch had seen so many versions of me. I stared at the front door, imagining it opening to a different kind of welcome. But I knew better. My family didn't do warmth. They did structure, appearances, achievement measured in job titles, Ivy League logos, and projected earnings. Tyler fit. I never did. When I finally rang the bell, the door didn't budge. "Avery," my mother's voice floated from the kitchen, "it's open." Of course it was. The scent hit first. Pot roast, rosemary, and that faint floral cleaner she overused. The photo wall greeted me like a tribunal. Tyler at MIT, Tyler shaking hands with some senator, Tyler's wedding at the vineyard in Napa. Not one shot of me in uniform. Not the commissioning photo I mailed them. Not the Defense Superior Service Medal from last year. "I made your favorite," Mom said, glancing at me for barely a second before turning back to the stovetop. "Well, Tyler's favorite, too." "I'm sure it's great, Mom." The table was set for 6. There was no name card, but we all knew where I sat. The not quite end, the gap between decision makers. At 7 on the dot, the front door opened and in walked the showpiece, Tyler and his wife, Lindsay. Her laugh was already loud in the foyer, like she had to assert dominance before even removing her coat. "Hey, Aves," Tyler said, with the 2-second hug that already turned toward Dad. I replied, 5 years. He blinked. "What?" "Nothing." Dinner unfolded like a corporate keynote. Tyler recapped quarterly wins, the restructuring of his team, and the Sky Shield integration he was spearheading for national defense alignment. Dad looked like he might cry from pride. "And you?" my mother asked, polite like a customer service call. "Still stationed somewhere out there?" I said, "Colorado Springs, Cyber Command." "Oh." A pause. "Still a... what's the rank?" "Colonel." Nobody blinked. Like I'd said, librarian. I took a sip of wine, red, bold, slightly sour. Lindsay probably brought it. They moved on. Back to Tyler, back to charts and defense talk and strategic vision, like I wasn't sitting with a Pentagon-approved clearance and authority to kill the very program they were bragging about. But I let them. I let them have tonight. Because tomorrow, I don't walk in as the forgotten daughter. I walk in as the one who gets the final say. The pot roast was just as I remembered. Tender, carefully seasoned, plated like it belonged in some glossy Midwestern food magazine. But the taste didn't matter. What lingered was the tension, cuttable with the same dull knives Mom insisted on using because they were a wedding gift. We sat, all 6 of us, in our assigned seats of ritual dysfunction. Dad at the head, Tyler to his right, Mom nestled between them like some exhausted referee, Lindsay opposite me, already swirling her wine, and me, off to the side, like a visiting colleague someone had invited last minute. "So," Tyler said, spearing a chunk of beef, "the Sky Shield upgrade's almost through phase 2. We just finalized the new interface metrics for drone to satellite sync. Took a few late nights, but totally worth it." Dad leaned in. "He's leading the entire integration effort. The Pentagon loves the architecture." Tyler grinned. "That's what Rebecca said." Rebecca, as in Rebecca Owens, the CEO. The same woman who had signed the liaison paperwork that now had my name on it. It took every ounce of discipline not to smirk. I chewed my roast, swallowed slowly. "That's impressive," I said. "Must be a lot of moving parts." "Oh yeah, a lot of coordination, and military timelines are, well, let's just say they're not exactly agile." He laughed like it was a joke we all shared. "Government contracts are slow," Dad added, nodding. "You'd be bored stiff with all that red tape, Avery. Honestly, you're better off where you are, boots on the ground, seeing the world." "Sure," I said, reaching for the water glass, "seeing the world." They talked around me like I was a traveling hobbyist with a passport and a rucksack. Not a cyber command colonel with clearance higher than any of them. I could feel my pulse in my teeth. Mom touched my arm lightly. "You're still in the Air Force, right?" 16th Air Force, Cyber Ops. "Oh, that's nice," she said. Like I'd mentioned I'd joined a book club. I looked at the table. Still sat with the same olive green cloth from my high school graduation. There were old patterns here, ones I used to trace with my fingers as a kid. I remember thinking back then that one day I'd leave this house and do something that would finally make them stop talking over me. But even now, at 37, with 2 stars signatures on my orders, I was still a muted character in the Tyler Grant show. "So, what exactly do you do?" Lindsay asked, her head tilting with that performative curiosity. I paused, fork midair. "Encryption analysis, security protocols, satellite data integrity audits." "Wow, that sounds technical." Tyler chuckled. "Aves is always like puzzles." I smiled, just slightly. Some puzzles can save lives. Dad reached for the wine. "Well, your brother's work might not save lives, but it sure as hell makes a difference. Stratus was just named primary contractor for Sky Shield's next round. Big deal." "I've heard," I said softly. "That's why I'm here." No one caught it. Or maybe they just didn't process what I meant. After dinner, I helped Mom with the dishes. The kitchen window overlooked the driveway, where my Tahoe sat like a foreign object in the middle of all that suburban sameness. My old Jeep had fit so nicely between the hedge and the brick mailbox. "Your father's proud of you, you know?" "Is he?" I didn't say it with malice, just curiosity. She didn't answer, just kept scrubbing. Later, alone in my old room, I sat on the same twin bed with the quilt Grandma made, surrounded by trophies and ribbons from a version of me they used to believe in. None of them marked anything after I joined ROTC. Not one from my commissioning, not one from command school. Nothing post-military, just the pre-approved version of Avery Grant, frozen in time. The part of me that used to ache for their validation was silent now, numb almost. Tomorrow would wake it up. I didn't sleep. Peterson's Space Force base was an hour's drive south, and my temporary quarters were just sterile enough to remind me why I'd gotten used to sleeping in briefing rooms, transport planes, or the front seat of a Humvee. The cot was fine. The silence was worse. The uniform lay across the desk like a second skin, waiting. Midnight came and went. I sat at the edge of the bed, staring at it. Dark blue, perfectly pressed, my ribbons aligned, polished shoes beneath. A silver eagle pin shimmered under the cheap desk lamp. Lieutenant Colonel had felt big. This felt like gravity. I pulled out a cloth and started with the buttons. One by one, tiny circles of control. Polishing wasn't necessary. Everything had been prepped days ago, but I needed the ritual, the quiet choreography of preparation. I needed to steady the hum in my chest, the part of me that remembered being the girl who used to flinch when her father asked what her backup plan was. The clock glowed 01:47. I finally stood, stretched, opened the mini fridge, and drank lukewarm water. My hands were calm. My stomach was steel. Military calm, they called it. Not the absence of fear, just the understanding that it didn't matter. I closed my eyes, and for a moment, it wasn't tomorrow I was thinking about. It was that night in Germany when the satellite link went haywire. A foreign actor had breached 2 layers of the comm system, aiming to reroute drone footage from a forward operating base. We caught it with 3 seconds to spare. 3 seconds. I remembered barking orders with the comms team scrambling behind me, the sweat freezing to my collar, and the precise moment when the override protocol kicked in and the breach was neutralized. That op never made the news, but it earned me the Defense Superior Service Medal. Nobody at the table tonight had heard about it. I sent the article anyway. Nobody replied. I turned back to the uniform, finished the buttons, inspected the rank, Silver Eagle, 06. I pressed it gently between my fingers. Some people call it a bird. I always thought of it as a blade. The file folder on the desk held my briefing documents. Project Sky Shield, encryption protocol phase breakdown, latency benchmarks. I'd already memorized the numbers, but I flipped through it anyway. 12 milliseconds, that was our ceiling. Tyler's last design submission had it hovering at 19. Tomorrow, he'd have to answer for it. I placed the file back in my briefcase, closed it slowly, sat back down. I could still feel the lingering ache in my shoulders, the tension that comes from being in a room where everyone mistakes you for something smaller than you are. It was like carrying invisible armor. They don't see it, but it's there. Every time you speak and someone talks louder. Every time you answer and someone laughs. I checked the time. 03:04. I didn't need sleep. I needed resolve. The kind that came from 18 years of proving I didn't belong in a box someone else picked for me. I wasn't here to shame anyone. I wasn't here for applause. I was here to decide what moved forward and what didn't. I zipped the uniform bag shut and sat in the dark. Tomorrow wasn't about proving anything. It was about owning what I'd already become.
The sky was still gunmetal gray when I pulled out of the base lot. Colorado mornings had this way of pretending to be gentle. Low fog, slow light bleeding over the Rockies, but you could feel the cold teeth under it. My Tahoe crunched down the gravel perimeter road, tires humming like a low drone beneath the otherwise still air. The uniform sat perfectly on me, like armor. Not stiff, not performative, just precise. My ribbons felt heavy, not from weight, but from memory. Every one of them held a moment, a place, a decision that turned out to matter. I checked my rearview mirror as the gate guard saluted. I nodded once, watching the reflection of that salute linger longer than it should have. By 0640, I was pulling onto the main thoroughfare toward Denver Tech Center. Stratus Dynamics' mirrored facade gleamed in the weak sunrise. It stood there like a cathedral, gleaming, cold, full of unspoken reverence for its own importance. I'd been there once before, quietly, as a silent observer in a subcommittee meeting. They never remembered me. I parked in a reserved stall marked DoD Liaison, AF 93016AF. A laminated placard sat on the dash. I adjusted it carefully. No room for misreads. As I stepped out, the chill bit up my cheeks. I heard a few footsteps behind me slow down. No words, just recognition. The uniform did that. It made people stand straighter, not out of fear, out of adjustment. Inside, security was tight. Retinal scan, badge swipe. One of the guards, maybe mid-30s, ex-army by the look of the tattoos, saw my clearance and immediately straightened. "Good morning, Colonel," he said, voice clipped with that particular kind of respect, the kind you never hear around your own family table. I nodded. "Morning. Summit's rooms on 14? "Yes, ma'am. Elevator's primed. Captain Ellis is waiting upstairs." Marcus. Efficient as ever. He was already emailing me latency updates at 5 a.m. A sharp kid. Air Force through and through. Obsessed with protocol and coffee so strong it could sterilize wounds. The elevator doors opened with a soft ding. Polished chrome interior. Silence. My own face reflected a dozen times. Calm, controlled. There was no room for anything else. 14th floor. The summit. Doors parted, and there he was. Captain Ellis in service blues, holding a tablet, stylus tapping rapidly across the screen. "Ma'am?" He handed me the device. "Updates from the drone system subgroup. They're still over threshold by about 3.4 milliseconds. Stratus hasn't corrected their relay delay yet." I scrolled. "Still using SHA 256 as the baseline?" "Looks like it," I muttered. Stubborn. He grinned just a little. "You want coffee?" "No time. Who's already in?" "CEO Owens and 4 directors. Tyler Grant is pacing by the windows." I nodded once, handed him the tablet, and walked. The hallway ahead was glass-lined on one side, sleek panels on the other. The morning light had finally begun to spill through, illuminating the polished tile beneath my boots. Each step echoed, not loudly, but enough. I could see Tyler before he saw me. He was flipping through his deck on a tablet, lips moving slightly as if rehearsing a pitch. He wore a slate blazer and that smirk of someone who knew the meeting would swing his way. And then he saw me. His mouth froze mid-word. His eyes dropped, first to the uniform, then to the insignia. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. A moment later, another figure rounded the corner. Rebecca Owens. Tall, composed, iron gray hair pulled into a bun so tight it looked structural. She locked eyes with me and smiled like we just bumped into each other at a classified dinner party. "Colonel Grant," she said, extending her hand. "Didn't realize you'd be joining us in person. It's an honor." "Pleasure's mine," I said, shaking it. Thought I stepped in. Her voice carried when she turned to the group behind her. "For those who aren't aware, this is Colonel Avery Grant, our Pentagon liaison for Project Sky Shield. She has final approval authority on all military integration protocols." And just like that, the air changed. I didn't look at Tyler. Not yet. But I heard his breath catch.
Silence. Like the kind that doesn't have a volume, just presence. I stood with Rebecca Owens at the glass-lined threshold of the summit room, sunlight reflecting off the insignia on my shoulder. Behind her, a half circle of execs and department leads pivoted like synchronized satellites. All eyes landed on me, on the uniform, on what that uniform meant. Tyler was still near the window, frozen, his tablet now hanging awkwardly by his side like it had just betrayed him. I could see the precise moment it clicked that I wasn't here to shadow or observe or take notes for someone else. I was here to decide. "Avery," Dad's voice said from somewhere behind the group. Familiar, assertive, ready to ask something before fully understanding the room. He appeared a moment later, 2 steps slower than usual, caught mid-conversation with someone in a gray vest and startup-level sneakers. He saw me, and his mouth paused halfway open. His eyes fell on my nameplate, then to the eagle, then back to Rebecca. "What's going on?" he asked, trying not to sound threatened. Why is she in uniform?" "Because I'm working," I replied, calmly, still holding my posture. Rebecca didn't wait for the awkwardness to deepen. "Colonel Grant has been overseeing Sky Shield's military integration strategy for the last 3 quarters. Her insights saved us hundreds of engineering hours. We're lucky to have her on site today." I stepped forward, past the cluster of men in fitted suits and watchful glances, past Tyler's confusion, past Dad's rising tension. "Let's head in." The summit room was all brushed steel and quiet power. 12 seats, long table, 1 small placard at the head labeled COL Avery Grant, 16th Air Force. My seat. No one said a word as I pulled it out. Ellis slipped into the chair beside me, boot heels aligned. His tablet lit up. The room filled quickly but silently, everyone doing the calculus. Uniform, colonel, DOD liaison, final authority. A Grant, but not that Grant. Tyler sat 4 chairs down, opposite Dad. He looked like someone who'd forgotten to study for the one test he didn't know was coming. The doors clicked shut. Rebecca began. "Thank you all for joining. I'll keep this brief so we can dive right into the technical milestones. Colonel Grant has reviewed your Phase 2 protocols and will be directing next step implementation decisions." She gestured to me and sat. I stood, opened the folder in front of me, and began. "Let's start with the data latency on satellite relay protocols. According to your latest design, the sync lag is still at 15.6 milliseconds. That's 3.6 over our military ceiling. We can't move forward with that margin, not with live drone ops." A few directors scribbled notes. A few looked nervously toward Tyler. I turned slightly. "Mr. Grant?" I said, voice clean, professional. "You submitted the new integration method last week, correct?" He cleared his throat. Yes, I did. We were exploring some fallback encryption methods. Just a concept." I nodded. "Then you're aware the fallback method you proposed is non-compliant with MIL STD 1553. It introduces redundancy issues we can't risk in live combat environments." He opened his mouth, closed it, looked toward Dad, who was stone still. "You'll need to revise and resubmit by Thursday COB." There it was. Control passed firmly and undeniably to the person no one expected. "Yes, ma'am," Tyler said, quieter. I sat again. No need to gloat. My notes filled the rest of the hour. Projected threat models, quantum vulnerability patches, a new AI-based intrusion detection pilot we'd been testing with a partner unit at Fort Meade. Every spec was clean, every term was mine. They stopped seeing my last name. They started seeing the eagle.
The room was so quiet during my final slide that I could hear someone's pen tapping near the end of the table. Quick, nervous bursts. Maybe habit, maybe tension. Probably both. I didn't mind. That silence meant they were listening. I closed the briefing with a slide titled Operational Risk Thresholds, Final Recommendations. No frills, just bold numbers and a 3-column grid. This is where the rubber meets the road, I said. If we can't bring phase 2 latency under 6 milliseconds, this system doesn't launch, period. A few heads nodded. One man in a tweed blazer glanced at his notes, then back up like he was trying to do math in real time. "Colonel," Rebecca said, leaning forward slightly, "how about the AI IDS module you mentioned earlier? How feasible is integration before the next Pentagon checkpoint?" I pulled up a new file on my tablet. Feasible with significant conditions. Right now, the IDS is detecting anomalies with a 91% accuracy rate, but the Stratus-side telemetry feed is cluttered. If Tyler's team can clean up the diagnostic flow, we can pilot it during next month's simulation phase. Rebecca looked down the table. "Tyler?" He blanked, already on his back foot from earlier. Yes, we can take another pass. It's just a matter of decoupling the debug pipeline from the telemetry." "Good," I said. "Do that." There was no venom in my tone. I wasn't here for petty victories. I was here because the project needed to survive. It was national security, not family therapy. Still, I caught the flicker in his eyes, something between resentment and disbelief. He'd pitched this morning to be his final validation, a launch pad to VP. Now he was scrambling to meet performance ceilings set by his older sister. I turned to the rest of the room. Second point, system fallback. I clicked again. New slide. If we lose link with the primary SATnet, your current fallback routes reroute through a shared relay node. I tapped a diagram. That opens us to a packet sniffing vulnerability. We're working with Space Command on a new relay encryption sequence. I'll push the spec this afternoon. More nods, less confusion this time. Someone near the far corner, Sandra Kim, systems chief, spoke up. "Colonel, how are we balancing this with zero-trust architecture timelines?" "Excellent question," I said. "Ellis." Captain Ellis tapped into his device and pushed a file to the room. "New benchmark targets included here. We've shaved implementation by 9 days using Colonel Grant's revisions." Rebecca turned to me again. "You've clearly thought this through." I offered a polite smile. "That's the job." A few chuckles rose, nervous mostly, but the kind you get when someone realizes they've underestimated the wrong person in the room. And then I saw Dad shift. He hadn't spoken in nearly 40 minutes. He'd watched, stiff and unreadable, eyes darting between my posture and the people leaning toward me every time I spoke. I wondered what he saw. Colonel Grant? Or just the daughter who used to ask if she could shadow him at work on Saturdays? The meeting wound down with next steps, timelines, follow-up sessions, and documentation chains. I outlined the expectations clearly and assigned deliverables without hedging. Not once did I raise my voice, not once did I need to. Authority doesn't yell, it anchors. As we stood to leave, I gathered my notes slowly, one by one. I caught Tyler watching me, his mouth tight, his fingers folded too neatly on the table. "You ran it clean," he said under his breath as I passed. "Wasn't running it. I was just doing what had to be done." He didn't reply. Didn't need to.
The glass walls of the summit room offered no privacy, so the real confrontation happened in my father's office. Mahogany paneling, brass lamp fixtures, and that ever-present hum of generational power humming beneath the carpet. He was already inside, perched stiffly at the edge of his desk, arms crossed. Mom was there too, sitting in one of the guest chairs, hands folded neatly in her lap like a parent-teacher conference was about to begin. Tyler leaned against the far window, posture half defensive, half lost. This was the jury I grew up with, the trifecta of silence, expectation, and controlled disapproval. "I didn't know," Dad said finally. "Colonel? For how long?" 6 months. Promotion orders came through in March. He shook his head, like I'd lied to him by omission. "I did," I said calmly. "You just didn't answer." Mom flinched,
slightly. When? Email, twice. Sent you both the press release. Attached the citation too. I even left a voicemail. Dad glanced at Mom, then back at me. I don't remember seeing anything. I believe you. Doesn't mean I didn't send it. A beat passed, the kind that tastes like copper. We didn't know what it meant, Mom said low. Colonel sounds high, but we don't know the structure. You always talked about cyber command. We thought that meant, still moving around. Still figuring it out? I lead a team of 35. I report directly to a 2-star. I've briefed NSA and Cybercom. I hold the keys to a project you just spent 20 minutes praising Tyler for. Her eyes filled for a second, but she blinked it back. Why didn't you explain it? I exhaled slowly, because I stopped trying to justify my worth. The air in the room thickened, the kind of silence not that comes from absence, but consequence. Tyler finally spoke. We thought you were stuck. I turned to him. You said people in the military just follow orders. You said that last night, right after calling my work just field stuff. He shifted uncomfortably. I didn't know what you actually did. You never talk about it. I did. You never asked. That landed hard. He looked away toward the Denver skyline beyond the glass. Dad cleared his throat. So what now? You want an announcement? Some kind of apology? I met his eyes. No, I said. I want what I've always deserved. Recognition. Not a parade, not a LinkedIn post, just the basic respect of being asked what I do before you assume you already know. He swallowed. You were always different, not worse, just not like the rest of us. That's not the compliment you think it is. My voice didn't shake, not once. I didn't join the Air Force to run away. I joined because the room you built had no seat for me, so I built my own table. Mom stood up suddenly, walked to me. Her hands trembled as she reached for my shoulders. I'm sorry, she said raw. I should have been there for all of it. I nodded, just once. The tears didn't fall, but they flickered at the edges. Tyler finally stepped forward. You could have crushed me in that room, but you didn't. I wasn't there to crush you. I was there to make sure the country doesn't get hacked by someone faster than we are. He let out a breath, almost a laugh. You were commanding. It was kind of terrifying. Good, I said. It's supposed to be. Then, slowly, Dad stood, moved toward me, hesitated, and then he extended his hand. Colonel Grant, I underestimated you completely. I took it. Not out of need, but closure.
We didn't talk much after that. Not in the office, not in the hallway, not even down the elevator. Dad had to brief another department. Tyler walked off with one of the directors who still looked like he was catching up to what had happened. Mom followed me to the lobby, quiet at first. Then she reached out and lightly tugged at my sleeve. Dinner? Just us? I hesitated, then nodded. Something easy. We ended up at a 24-hour diner near Colfax, one of those retro places with cracked leather booths, lemon pie in the case, and jukeboxes at every table that haven't worked since the early 2000s.
She ordered soup, I ordered pancakes. No logic, just warmth. The server brought our food and left without asking if we needed anything else. Thank God. For a while, we ate in silence. Not the kind from earlier. This one was lighter, waiting. A silence that makes space. "I kept your letters," Mom said, staring at her spoon. "All of them, even the ones we didn't understand." I looked at her. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Your father, he never said it out loud, but he felt like he failed you. That you didn't want to be part of the legacy, the company, the plan." "I didn't," I said, "because it wasn't mine." She nodded, slowly. "I see that now." I cut into my pancakes. Butter melted over the edges, syrup catching in the seams. She said, voice barely above a whisper, "I used to think it was brave. What you did, leaving. But then I got scared that maybe it meant you were lost, that I failed you somehow. You didn't," I said. "I was just tired of not being seen." She reached into her purse and pulled out something wrapped in a napkin. "I baked this last night. Apple. I wasn't sure if you'd come." She pushed it across the table, like it was a peace offering. "Still your favorite?" "It is," I said. We didn't cry. Not that night. But something cracked and softened. Something old and sharp dulled at the edges. Back at the parking lot, we stood awkwardly by the Tahoe. She gave me a half hug, then pulled back. "You're welcome here. Anytime." I smiled. "Thanks, Mom." I drove back to base, headlights carving lines into the dark. Halfway down I-25, my phone buzzed. A text from Tyler. "Used your rollout design today. It's good. Faster." Then another. "Told the team it was yours." I didn't reply right away. Just let the moment sit. Later, back in my quarters, I opened my inbox. Among the spam and security updates was a forwarded email from Rebecca Owens. Subject: Sky Shield milestone photo. Attached was a picture. Me, in uniform, standing beside her and Brigadier General Rivas from Space Command. The caption read, "Colonel Avery Grant, the quiet force behind Sky Shield." I stared at it for a long time. Not out of vanity, but because it was real. They finally saw me. And more importantly, I had already seen myself. My apartment in Washington, D.C. was quiet that evening, save for the distant hum of traffic below and the soft click of wine glasses against the marble counter. From the 10th floor window, you could see the Air Force Memorial in the distance, those 3 silver arcs rising like jet trails frozen in time. It was one of the reasons I picked this place, a silent reminder of trajectory, of lift. The bookshelves were neatly arranged, rows of cyber warfare manuals, a few framed mission commendations, and tucked between 2 volumes on AI systems was a new edition, Defense Tech Monthly, April issue. The cover showed me standing beside General Rivas and CEO Owens. The headline, "Sky Shield reaches IOC ahead of schedule, a colonel's calculated command." Dad brought the magazine with him, walked into my apartment like it was hallowed ground. He held it carefully, like it might disappear if he gripped it wrong. "Figured you might want an extra copy," he said. "I already have one." I took it anyway. He didn't meet my eyes right away, just set it gently on the counter and cleared his throat. I keep one in my office. That part meant something. He stepped aside to make room for Mom, who was carrying the same apple pie tin wrapped in a kitchen towel. Still warm, still trying, still enough. "I hope the oven in here works," she said with a nervous smile. "It does." Tyler and Lindsay arrived last, trailing 2 bottles of red and a peace-offering grin. "Look at you," he said, surveying the apartment. "Everything's lined up like a command center." "Habit," I shrugged. Dinner was easy, civil, even warm. Tyler talked shop for a minute, then veered into lighter ground. Lindsay asked for the wine opener. Mom marveled at how organized my spice rack was. There was laughter. It felt new, real even. After dinner, while Mom and Lindsay loaded the dishwasher and Dad examined the medals on my shelf, Tyler pulled me aside. "We implemented your relay sequence, cleaned the telemetry feed just like you suggested, hit the latency target last week." I raised an eyebrow. "Told the team?" He smirked. "Eventually. I let them think I was a genius for 5 minutes first." I shook my head, smiling. "As long as it works." "It does. And so do you. I mean, you've really got it together. I never said that before." "No, you didn't." "Well, I'm saying it now." Across the room, Dad was holding one of the commendations, the cyber defense citation, the one tied to the near breach in Germany. His finger traced the frame. "I read about this one. Didn't realize at the time you were leading it." "I was." He nodded. Didn't ask for more, didn't offer an interpretation. Just nodded, like a man finally realizing the map he'd drawn missed several cities that had been built in his absence. Later, we sat with coffee and pie, laughter softer now, edges smoothed by exhaustion and understanding. Dad raised his glass. "To Colonel Avery Grant," he said, voice not booming but steady, "who proved that your worth isn't found in following someone else's path, but in walking your own." We all raised our glasses. And this time, I didn't have to wonder if they meant it.
That night, long after everyone left and the pie tin sat empty beside the sink, I climbed up to the rooftop patio. It wasn't much, just a flat slab of concrete with 2 chairs, a rusted railing, and a view that somehow felt like exhale. DC stretched out in front of me, lights flickering like thoughts that hadn't landed yet. Somewhere, a siren echoed. A soft wind picked at the hem of my lounge pants. I sat down with the blanket draped over my shoulders and stared at the stars, just barely visible through the glow. It was the kind of stillness I'd chased for years, the kind that didn't ask anything of me. Not rank, not resilience, not proof. My phone buzzed in my lap, a comment on my latest post. @EngineerKai93. How do you stay calm when nobody believes in you? I read it twice, then typed back. You stop waiting for them to. You become the kind of person who believes in yourself enough that when the moment comes, they're the ones catching up. I hit send, then opened my recording app. Hey, I said softly into the mic. It's Avery, 37, Colonel. Tonight, I had dinner with the people who once couldn't say those words without wincing. And it was good. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And that's better. It's proof that people can change, even if they're late. But here's the truth. I didn't need their applause to be valid. I didn't need their pride to mean something, because I kept building and working and standing even when the only voice cheering for me was my own. The blanket shifted on my shoulders, and I pulled it tighter. They once told me I was wasting my potential, that I'd never become anything, but they were wrong. I became something because I chose differently, not despite it. I looked out toward the city's skyline, so full of power, ambition, illusion. And when I walked into that boardroom, I didn't need to raise my voice. My presence did the speaking. And that's what I want for all of you. Every night I'll watching this from their bed or their break room or the floor of a dorm room. Keep going. Keep building. Keep showing up. Let them underestimate you. That's not your weakness. It's your secret advantage. And when the time comes, you don't owe them revenge. You owe yourself the moment where you realize you already won. I smiled. Not big, just enough. Good night. I ended the recording, closed my eyes, let the wind hum in my ears. We all have moments where we wonder if the path we've chosen was the wrong one, especially when the people we love can't see the value in our choices. But sometimes the real proof isn't in changing their minds. It's in becoming so solid in yourself that their opinions become just another room you don't have to stand in. Have you ever had to fight to be seen? What was your moment of clarity? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your story. If this resonated, like and subscribe. Share it with someone who's walking their own path in silence. Here's the truth. You don't have to yell to be powerful. You just have to keep showing up.